Welcome to the World Away.
Travel tales to inspire your wanderlust.
Welcome back to the World Awaits. I hope you've had a wonderful week, everyone. And before we kick off this episode, don't forget to enter our competition for a night's stay at Moxie Sydney Airport Hotel, because we do love a good airport hotel.
And it looks so fun with DJs and quiz nights. The prize is a night's stay at the hotel, a welcome drink on arrival, buffet breakfast for two, free airport shuttle transfers to the terminal, and incredibly, up to 14 nights free valet parking at the hotel. And you have a year to redeem the stay too.
Amazing. It's only 2 stops from Central by train and then on Circular Quay if you're joining a cruise. And I'm a fan of the runway rooms because you can watch the planes from bed.
Planes from bed, who doesn't love that? To enter the competition, simply like, follow and tag. Jump onto the competition post on our Instagram or Facebook pages at The World Awaits Podcast and Moxie Sydney Airport. Like the post, follow us, and for a bonus entry, tag a mate you would like to take with you.
This week, we have a great episode for you, kicking off with a new report showing the world's favourite destinations for billionaires. Think the Kardashians, Beckhams and Richard Branson. Who doesn't want to know where they travel to? So it's a bit of aspirational travel for us all. Also, our tip is about some of the best winter light festivals around the country, so stay with us for that one. And I'm also interviewing Carole Rosenblat, who runs Solo Woman Tours, and it all started with a blog where her readers chose where she ventured. But before we get into all that, how was your week, Belle?
Oh, well, I spent the weekend on the Mornington Peninsula eating myself into a coma at the 2 ferry terminals on either side of the bay at Sorrento and Queenscliff. I'm actually going to dedicate an episode to that in a few weeks, so I'm not going to reveal any more. Also, if you ever thought of flying with South African Airways, you can check out my review in the Canberra Times.
Amazing. Well, mine was head down working for Carry On and also doing edits on my manuscripts. My first book doesn't actually come out till next year, which you've probably heard us talking about. But you can head over to my new author website, which is Kirsty Bedford, for updates. And I'm doing the first round of editorial feedback edits and also working on book 2 because I was fortunate to get a 2-book deal. So it's very busy. But let's kick into it, and we have some fun research for you, and it's all about the world's favourite destinations for billionaires, as we already mentioned. So MauiEliteProperty.com has analysed the average 5-star hotel price and accommodation availability and options like yacht clubs, golf courses, beach clubs, and of course whether or not it has a private aircraft terminal so you can fly straight in.
Very important. And top of the ranking is the French Riviera, which has 74 5-star hotels and villas and 20 exclusive leisure options because they don't want to sweat beside us, and yacht clubs and championship golf courses. But, a night at a top hotel here costs around $1,600, which is steep for most travellers, but only 2/3 of what Monaco charges. Love Monaco, but and if you were staying here on the French Riviera, you would be following the footsteps of billionaires like Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and, of course, the oligarch billionaire and former owner of Chelsea Football Club, Roman Abramovich.
And Monaco ranked second. You think Monaco would come first, but it didn't. It came second. And it has the most expensive hotel night average on the list at 3,370 Australian dollars. And what might be surprising is that it actually has fewer 5-star hotels than any other destination that featured in the top 5. But there are 50 fine dining restaurants and a dozen exclusive leisure spots, go figure, including Monte Carlo Casino and Yacht Club de Monaco. It also doesn't have a private jet terminal, so visitors have to land in Nice. Oh, what a shame. But for billionaires willing to make that drive, Monaco remains a playground of old money and high stakes. And billionaires spotted there include Pakistani and American businessman Shahid Khan, who owns the Jacksonville Jaguars of the National Football League, and the American businessman who founded several popular Las Vegas casinos, Steve Wynn.
Oh, look, I've got to say, I have stayed at one of those elite hotels, the Hotel Hermitage Monte Carlo Monaco. Fabulous. It's about $1,600 a night if you wanted to stay tomorrow night, because I did a little check for you. What a shame that Monaco lost because it doesn't have a private. Well, it doesn't have room for an airstrip, right? Now, third on the list, it literally does not have room. Third on the list is Miami, and this is where you'll find Zuckerberg, people with surnames like Zuckerberg and Page, if you're looking for, Facebook founder or Meta founder and also the Google founder. If you would like to lurk or follow them around, by the way, we do not advocate stalking here. But anyway, if you did feel the need to stalk a Zuckerberg, you'd need to pay around $1,600 for an average hotel night. There are 18 exclusive leisure attractions from private beach clubs to members-only social houses. And Miami is pretty much seen as the less formal alternative to the European Rivieras.
And the Hamptons, a skip from New York City, ranked fourth. Here you'll be paying about $1,600 as well, Australian, for an average night stay. It has about as a third as many luxury hotels as Miami, but nearly as many fine dining restaurants. And it was a tie for the most exclusive leisure options. What sets the Hamptons apart is its concentration of private golf clubs and exclusive beach clubs, many of which require years-long waiting.
I swear to God, you're not going to find me hanging around a golf club. Oh my gosh, I find golf so boring. Just so boring. Anyway, I wouldn't be waiting years for it. I wouldn't be waiting 10 minutes for it. I would be at number 5, which is the Amalfi Coast. Of course I'd be there. And it's an absolute bargain compared to the others. Only about $1,300 a night. Here you can perv on some of the world's richest people. Bezos is there hanging out with his mates, people like James Packer, who, like the rest of us, love the dramatic shorelines and the beach clubs tucked into the cliffs. But they also love the private yacht anchorage as well because they have yachts and I do not have yachts.
Courchevel has the Russian magnates, the Maldives has the Beckhams, or Mallorca and Capri come in next, and the Kardashians' holiday of choice is Sori Resort in Bali, and they all round out the top 10. So now you know where the richest people in the world like to roll. So next time you're in any of these places, keep your eyes peeled because you never know just who you might bump into. If you'd like to help support our production costs, you can buy us a coffee at coffee.com/theworldawaits. That's ko-fi.com/theworldawaits, so we can continue to bring you inspirational travel interviews with the world's best. This week, I'm chatting to Carole Rosenblat, a freelance journalist, copywriter, small group tour operator, and the author of interactive travel site Drop Me Anywhere, where readers choose where she travels.
What an incredible idea. But I'm going to say, Kirsty, what if they send her to a place she doesn't want to go to? What if she has to go to Nigeria or somewhere like that?
Well, she does cover off all of that. And she also talks about how she came up with the idea to set it all up and how it led to her starting up her solo trips for women. And she gives insider tips into some of the best and worst places to travel solo as a woman. Welcome to the show, Carole.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you on The World Awaits. Let's start by telling us how you came to get into travel.
Oh, a long time ago, I was in banking, but I only worked so that I could have money to travel, and so I figured out a way to make some money at it, and I applied. I was 24 when I left banking, collected a retirement and pension, but I started with Windjammer Barefoot Cruises, which were tall ships from the 1920s and 30s. And I was a purser, and it was very out of character for me. Everybody literally thought I had gone crazy. It was very, very scary, and it changed my life.
So tell us a bit about how you came with the idea for what you do on your Drop Me Anywhere blog.
So Drop Me Anywhere, it came about a bit organically from social media. I had worked in travel pretty much my entire life after 24 from there, because I went from tall sailing ships to big cruise ships for 5 years. And then I was a camping adventure tour guide and then a tour manager for high-end international tours and tour guide for things in between. And also worked in logistics for corporate meeting management all over the world and in hotels. And I had gone back to cruise ships when the world economy crashed and was the manager of youth activities for Disney Cruise Line. And I was there for a couple of years, working 80 hours a week and for 4 to 5 months straight. And when I had enough of that, I got off and took a little sabbatical. And then I was in my 40s, and apparently that's too old for women to get hired in hospitality or something. And at least in the US, there were jobs overseas, but they were not offering visas with them. And I didn't quite know what to do. And I was on a Twitter travel chat. It was a Twitter travel chat when they were cool and you got, questions and all that. And one of the questions was, if you had a travel show, what would it be called and what would it be about? And I didn't really think of it. And it just sort of fell out of my typing fingers. And I said, mine's called Drop Me Anywhere. And it's about travel without a plan, because those are the best adventures. And the response was incredible. People were saying, oh my gosh, you need to kickstart this and you need to make a pilot and all of that. And honestly, I'd been freelance most of my life except for Disney, and I had enjoyed a regular salary. And so I really wasn't looking for that, but nothing else was hiring. Nobody else was hiring me. So I reached out to Chris Elliott, who was he was one of the first travel bloggers, and he's the ombudsman. He was, I think, for Travel and Leisure, or one of them, and or Condé Nast Traveler. And Chris is still syndicated. And I had helped him with adding a story for a story he was writing. And I reached out to him and I was like, Chris, is this something? And he said, oh my God, I love this. I wish I could do it. Don't try to sell it to magazines, do it as a blog, and that way you own the rights. And so I planned the first trip, or the readers did. I didn't plan anything. They didn't plan it. They chose the destination, which put me in St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada, in February.
Of which year?
That was 2014, because the first vote I put up was on January 1st at 12:01 a.m., right after the clock struck midnight in 2014. That's when it started. And St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada was the place.
So you literally just go where someone tells you. So how do you logistically organize that if it's, if it's somewhere quite far away? What if they said to you they want you to go to New Zealand?
Oh, I was there. Route me anywhere. I actually also pet sit around the world. I sheep sat there. But what ended up happening that first year, I did it out of my home in Arizona, and I did 4 trips that year. But it was getting quite expensive. This was all self-financed. I used just my savings. And I didn't know what this was, but I just knew I had to do it, and pretty much figured after the first trip, where I panicked right beforehand, that, oh, there was a book in this or something. And it's turned into a tour company for women, but I've been writing the book for a long time. But that first year I worked on it out of my house but the round trip tickets were costing quite a bit, as was my mortgage. So I sold or gave away my car, furniture, and clothes, and rented out my house and went nonstop around the world on their vote. So the cost and travel was a lot less going from place to place, because what I would do is that first vote of when I was completely nomadic, they sent me to Germany to drink Glühwein, because my readers are cool. And each vote is themed. And so for the next vote, I said, all right, to save my wallet and my body, I'm already in Europe, so let's stay in Europe. And I realized the next place you send me will be Valentine's Day. I'll be there. So I've been reading articles about the most romantic cities in Europe, and I put up some choices. I always put up an other category too. And they didn't choose Paris or Venice. They chose Budapest, which was not on my radar. And it's where I currently live now, because I discovered it from them. They were right. I fell in love with the city. So that's how, when I was completely nomadic, I traveled around the world, but it was fairly in order because I chose the votes. When I was in Asia and I used Kuala Lumpur as a home base because you learn from other travelers and we all share our knowledge. And other travelers had told me Kuala Lumpur is a great base because opposed to other small cities in Asia, some of them can be quite small. You don't have big malls or anything. And Malaysia, you can get stuff. And sure enough, my computer broke, but there's a 5-story electronics mall that was able to help. Also, you can get really inexpensive flights all around Asia from Kuala Lumpur. And embassies are there. So if you need to get a visa, you can get that there. So I used Kuala Lumpur as a home base there while I was in Asia.
So how did you get people on board, and did the numbers really grow? So it was initially just like 3 people voting, and then all of a sudden it became more and more and more?
Exactly. A good example of that is how I ended up in St. John's, Newfoundland. So this was a new blog. I didn't have followers. And a friend of mine was from Vancouver, Canada. And so she said, I've even us in Canada, we really wonder about St. John's, Newfoundland. It's kind of strange. It's like an hour and a half, I think, from their Eastern time zone. Not an hour and a half. And they speak kind of funny, and I'm really curious about it. So as I said, I listed locations. And this first vote was after I used Jimmy Buffett, the famous American adventure singer. And he sings a song called, I think it's in Boat Drinks, and he says, I gotta fly to Saint Somewhere. So I asked where Saint Somewhere was. And I put up St. Martin, St. Bart's, St. Thomas. So Shauna, my friend, chose the other category and put in St. John's, Newfoundland, or Newfoundland. It's about the land, they taught me. And then she started an email and Facebook campaign, and with her friends, family, all that. And that's how I ended up in St. John's. But then every place I went, because I wrote every day, this was interactive. People would vote, but then they would return every day to read because now they were personally involved. And so it gained this following there, and it got some media attention eventually. Because it was so unusual. And I write, it's informational travel humor. It's funny. I write the stories, and I don't make fun of the people in places. It's more making fun of myself. But in each place, also like in Germany, I got a very big following there because it was the Saturday before Christmas. I was cat sitting. I took the bus down to the Carave, which is the famous department store that was a U.S. plane flew into in World War II. It's really famous, and its top floor is famous for its gourmet section and restaurant. And I was treating myself to a breakfast there the Saturday before Christmas. I got off the bus, and there was this small crowd outside and one police car. So I asked the hop-on, hop-off bus driver, what's going on? He said, robbery. There were, I forgot the word he used. But he was sort of in a little panic. Well, it turns out he said mobsters. That's what he said, mobsters. And the Carave had just been robbed. And the jewels were taken from their jewelry department downstairs. And there was the guards were pepper sprayed. And I happened to arrive just after it happened. So I took a few photos and I put it out on Twitter and said, when all you want to do is have breakfast at the Carave and it's robbed. And I went over to Checkpoint Charlie. Suddenly I had all these German followers. And there was this one guy, Frank, that every day would write. And he liked the blog, but he was telling me what I did wrong and what I need to do. and really long ones. And one day, Frank, he wrote how he loved the blog, but I didn't write enough. I didn't write often enough. I'm like, Frank, I write every day. And he said, I don't know if you know how all of us found you, but our national newspaper, Der Spiegel, picked up your Twitter feed because you had the first photos from the Catave robbery. And so it kind of happened in each country. I was in Mexico walking with a friend, and somebody we had met earlier in the day at an expat newspaper that they had that we were writing for, drove by, and he stopped. And he turned to the woman next to him in the car and said, "Oh, I want to introduce you to Carole." And the woman said, "Oh, I know her. I follow her blog." Um, yeah, a lot of them ended up in the countries I was in because honestly, I treated it like a job. I was self-financing, but I worked hard and I've treated it like a job, and and my job in that respect is to travel for me is about the people. And so my job was meeting the people.
So
And
I've got two questions for you. One is, how many countries have you visited? And secondly, obviously, that was is a good segue then for you to start your own tours because you've traveled so extensively.
well, yeah, both those questions are great ones. I've been to I'm not a stamp collector, as we call them. These are countries I've actually, visited, got out of the airport, things like that. And I've worked in travel pretty much my whole life. So I visited 73 countries. And as far as opening the tour company, what I noticed on Drop Me Anywhere, because you get your, stats and things like that. And I have a Facebook page for Drop Me Anywhere. And that Facebook page is 87% women. And um, when I look at ages for both, it's over 40. I was not a 22-year-old backpacker. I'm not a 22-year-old backpacker doing this, which is very different now. And women, um, when there would be an article, as I said, it got some media attention, and I would receive emails from many people, but especially women, and especially those over 40. And they say, there's this one big thing I've always wanted to do, and you're making me brave. And so, they can relate. But also, I've been a tour guide and tour manager for many years, like 20, for other companies. And the last one I did for a large company had 46 people on the tour and me. And I don't think that's a great experience. And of those 46, I think I had 6 singles and 5 were women. And so I just thought, well, there are other women like me who have never been married. There are those that I'd hear is, my husband doesn't like to travel, but I want to. Okay, people are traveling separately now these days too. And then I'd hear, oh, my girlfriends and I, we really want to do this trip and everything, but we can't get our act together and timing and all that. And I also really wanted to empower women. Um, there's so many articles out there saying, basically, how to stay safe as a woman traveling solo. How do you stay safe walking out of your house? You know? And so I kind of really dislike that. And I wanted to show that it wasn't so scary, but our tagline for the tour company is, when you want to travel solo but not alone. Sometimes that's a great way to dip your foot into it, or you do want to share the experience too. And so it's small groups, 20 or less, really normally 12. And also, I want to share with women, for Americans, and probably New Zealanders too, except within the city, we don't we don't have mass transit that really works so much, unless you're in Chicago or New York or San Francisco, things like that. So a lot of women are afraid to travel and use that. And so I want to be able to say, to show them, it's great if you're on a tour and somebody else is arranging it all. And, it's the one time I do plan. And that's great. But if you do want to know, I can show you, how did I find this train we're taking? And how did I know to choose this metro on the left versus the one on the right? And can I get on any car that comes? And if you want, I can show you that so that you feel empowered and comfortable to do it on your own, should you want to. So that, as well as my suppliers, whenever possible, I use female-owned businesses as my suppliers. Whenever possible, given financial constraints and quality and things like that. But that way I support other female entrepreneurs.
Yeah, amazing. What's somewhere that you were dropped that you never expected to go, that really surprised you?
I would say Budapest. Again, not even on my radar. At least for me, and I'm told by others that it feels exotic or something. Maybe it's the name or the Hotel Budapest or what. But this would be one. And I'll tell you, it's one of the most beautiful cities in Europe. Definitely one of the most beautiful capitals. I compare it Paris, Rome. It's actually, I think, much more beautiful than those. The whole waterfront is UNESCO listed. But it's not just the waterfront. And it's, I'd say Budapest was the surprise for me.
What's been a particular high or low of your travels, of being dropped in places?
I can definitely say the low. Sadly, it was India. I said I write informational travel humor. India, I wrote a very honest story where I wrote about standing on a train platform and crying. And my sister contacted me the next day, and she said, I thought maybe you'd wake up and regret posting that, but you shouldn't. That's my favorite thing you've written. And India, as I told my readers at the end of that section, is I'm a big proponent of solo female travel and travel without a plan. India is not the place to do that. There are problems with violence against women. Delhi, like my as I said, my joy in travel is to talk to people, but I couldn't because I was constantly being surrounded to people's trying to sell me things. And I was circled at a train station by these men, and I had to get up and move, and they made lewd noises, and I had to get up and move. I moved over to where there was a family sitting, a mother, father, and a little boy. And that, India was very difficult, and I couldn't take overnight trains for safety reasons as a woman traveling alone. And in Delhi, it was recommended I not go out at night. And that was the one place I did do a little research beforehand because it involved safety. I knew some of, what the issues were with women. And so on Twitter, there were women that were living in India that helped me out and gave me the number for the police for women. Told me when I get into a car, a taxi or something, to get on the phone. And even if I'm not talking to somebody, at least pretend and say, I'm in car number this. We're just leaving here. We should be to you in 10 minutes in this amount of time, so the driver could hear. So, India was very difficult for me.
What about the highest high?
There's so many. Oh, so many. So it's hard to compare, and I hate to say it again, but Budapest, I walked out the door, it was my last night, and I was going to the Irish pub because I love going to Irish pubs. There's always some Irish person there, And it's sort of, wherever I was, I try to find a regular bar that I could, feel at home walking into. And I was heading to the Irish pub that I had found that I currently live 6 doors down from now. And I walked out the door of that apartment, and there was this man walking by dressed like as a Cossack, and a little girl who was wearing a princess gown and clown makeup. And I said, "Where are we going so dressed up?" And he said, "Oh, we're going to a party. Today is the Jewish holiday of Purim, a very celebratory holiday." And I told them my last name, which is quite Jewish. And they said, "Oh, you should come." And I came, and suddenly I was in this room with a table that held like 100 people. And people were arriving and putting food down and throwing down bottles of booze on there. And it turned out this guy was the rabbi. And it was a joyful night, and there was singing and prayers, but the rabbi on this day, he's commanded to get drunk. It's a celebratory, and he followed the commandment there. And but when he was praying, and when he and the cantor next to him were singing and all that, I looked around and I just thought, we're in the middle of what was the Jewish ghetto in Budapest. And between Nazis and then the Soviets that ruled here until 1989, 90, this could not have been done. Celebrating a Jewish holiday in the middle, in public. And so it really, that really touched me. I guess also a day in Bali too, when I was in Bali, and I took a 2.5-hour ride on the back of a motorbike of a tour guide up mountains and crossing rivers and stuff to this village that then you take this rickety old rowboat to get to the cemetery island. And it's where they don't bury and they don't cremate. They lay the bodies out in these bamboo cages so animals can't get to them. And it's a whole story of a sweet-smelling tree that they had over-tourism was the problem. Everybody came to smell the tree. And the king said, all right, to counteract that, if an adult dies naturally, you bring them here. And that way that'll counteract the smell of the tree. And so we went there, but while we were at the village, another woman showed up, and she was from Belgium. And she her name is Mary. We're still connected on Facebook. And she showed up on a motorbike, and so she became part of the deal for the boat. And then this Polish guy showed up, and he was blown away that there were 2 women that were traveling solo to this place. Blown away. And he joined that too. And so the next day, Mara and I, we rented motorbikes, and we rode to these temples in the rain, and it was beautiful. So Ollie was
Amazing.
so wonderful.
I think we're going to have to do a second episode because you've got so many amazing stories to tell, but we are unfortunately running out of time. So I'm going to ask you the last question we ask all our guests, which is, what's the most bizarre thing that's ever happened to you on your travels?
One example I could say, and I can't say it happened to me, but I stayed at a nudist RV resort. Do you guys know what an RV?
Yeah.
A motor, a camper van kind of thing, camper. So I stayed at that in Oregon, honestly, because I figured there'd be good writing in it. So I went. It was called the Willies because it was on the Willamette River. And I went there, and I'd never been to one of these places. And they knew that. The woman at the desk was so kind. They were all so kind. And so once I checked in, and I had met somebody while I was checking in, I grabbed my bottle of wine that I had so I could, so I was a nice icebreaker. And I walked through, and the woman I met her at a picnic table. And we sat down and started talking, and it was in May, so all their regulars were arriving for the season. And so people kept stopping by, and she would introduce me, and they were so nice and open. And um, when, like, even with her, she had no top on, but she had a skirt on. And at some point I said something, and she said, "Oh, am I making you uncomfortable? I can put something on." And I'm like, "No, we're in your place. It's fine." I'm like, "It's just a little bit chilly, so that's why." And so the one place that you had to go, you didn't have to be nude, but there was one place that you had to, and that was the swimming pool, and the saunas connected and things. And so I went the next morning. I went to the swimming pool. It turns out these people were late sleepers, so there was nobody around. But I went to the swimming pool, which means I was nude. The only people around were workers, like, trimming trees and things. And it was, yeah, a little. I was out of my comfort zone, I guess. But I got used to being out of my comfort zone, and so I was out of my comfort zone. And I discovered that when you go in the pool, then you feel a bit clothed. The water clothes you. But then I get out, and people were around, and was in the sauna with a couple and things like that. And so when I left, I checked out, and I told the woman at the desk, I said, I went to the swimming pool, which she knew what that meant. She's like, "Oh, good for you." So I'd say, again, it didn't happen to me, but I made it happen.
Oh, amazing. And we will put a link to it in the show notes. And thank you so much for being on The World Awaits.
Thanks so much, Kirsty. It was a pleasure.
That was Carole Rosenblat, and you can find her at her website, dropmeanywhere.com. Our tip this week is about the best winter light festivals around the country, and we're going to kick off with one of the country's biggest, which is Vivid in Sydney. The annual event is currently running until the 13th of June, so if you're listening as this episode drops, there's still time to go along, and if not, prepare yourself for next year's event, because it only gets bigger every year. This year there are 22 shows across 11 nights, from food to music and ideas as well, because it pitches itself as a festival of ideas. So you get everything from the great chef Ottolini to Afrobeats.
Incredible. And Melbourne's major winter festival is called Rising, which has also some light elements. And this was born out of the White Night event. It has more than 100 events over 12 nights, including some laser installations, and it's got music and dance and theatre and art. It's actually also only on until the 8th, so you're going to have to be quick. But it's an annual event as well, so you can check out the link in the show notes and get to next year's. Expect things like turning the forgotten Flinders Street Station ballroom into an art exhibition, or projecting massive lightworks on Hamer Hall, which is the largest indoor venue at the Arts Centre in Melbourne. There are also First Nations-led concerts in underground stations and curated art trams, where trams are turned into artists' works.
I vividly remember doing a Beyonce dance class at 2 a.m. in Fed Square at the festival one year. Amazing, amazing. Moving to Adelaide, you will find Illuminate Adelaide. This event, it's got a collision of light, art and technology. The city streets and parklands are turned into a glowing gallery of immersive installations and cutting-edge projections. So this one runs from July the 3rd to July the 19th this year across the city, including the Adelaide Botanic Gardens. Back in Melbourne, for your diaries, don't miss Lightscape, which is held in the lush, dark parkways of the Royal Botanic Gardens. If you always wanted to run through the gardens at night, this is the one for you. It is a ticketed medal event, and it is promising to transform nature into a sensory winter wonderland as you wander through glowing trails with an immersive soundscape, and that is at the Royal Botanic Gardens.
Yeah, gotta love the Royal Botanic Gardens in Melbourne. They're fantastic. And also in the Docklands area, there's the Firelight Festival, which is a 3-day event that brings the heat to winter with towering fire installations and roaming performers and heaps of pop-up foodie feasts. And that runs from July the 3rd to the 5th. So there's still time to get to that. And also, again, it'll be on again next year. So we will put a link to all of those in the show notes.
Next week, I'm taking you cruising in Japan on board a Japanese liner, the Mitsui Ocean Cruises. So let's get nautical.
Can't wait to hear about that. Love Japan, and a cruise sounds fantastic. And we'd love it if you followed us on socials. You'll find us at The World Awaits Podcast on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. And feel free to drop us a line at hello@theworldawaits.au. Or if you're enjoying this episode, please give us a rating or a review.
That's a wrap for The World Awaits this week. Click to subscribe anywhere you listen to your favourite pods.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.